The knock came at 2:17 a.m. Sharp, official, the kind that slices through sleep and leaves a metallic taste of dread in your mouth. I knew the sound. I'd heard it once before, years ago, on a different mountain, in a different life. 3 raps. Pause. 2 more. Authority. Rehearsed. I lay still in the loft of my cabin, listening to the wind worry the pines and the fire settle into a low, glowing breath. The place smelled like cedar and coffee grounds. My boots were by the door, my jacket on the chair, my name carved, badly, into the edge of the table. This was my cabin. Mine. I had built it plank by plank with my own hands after the world burned down, and I needed somewhere quiet enough to hear myself think again. Another knock. Louder. Sheriff's office. A man called. Come to the door, please. I sat up, heart steady, not racing, not afraid, curious, because the sheriff's office didn't come up here in the middle of the night unless something was wrong. And nothing was wrong unless sleeping in your own bed counted as a crime. I climbed down the ladder, pulled on my jacket, and opened the door to find 2 deputies standing under my porch light. Behind them, half hidden by the shadows and her own righteousness, stood a woman with a phone clutched to her chest like a talisman. Perfect blowout. Yoga pants. A puffer vest that probably cost more than my truck. She didn't look at me. She looked past me, into my cabin, like she expected to find a meth lab or a body or proof that the world was still orderly. That's him, she said, finally meeting my eyes. That's the man who's been trespassing. One of the deputies cleared his throat. Says you've been staying here overnight. She's with the HOA. I smiled, not because it was funny, because it was inevitable. Yeah, I said, I slept here. The woman sucked in air like she'd been waiting all night to correct me. You can't. Short-term occupancy is prohibited. This is a nature preserve-adjacent community. We have rules. Rules. I glanced past them at the trees, black and endless, and thought about how long those rules had lasted the last time the world tested them. I own this cabin, I said. Paid for it. Built it. Slept in it. Her face tightened. That's not what the records say. The deputies exchanged a look. One of them, older, calmer, asked for my ID. I handed it over. He studied it, then studied me, then studied it again. The woman leaned forward, triumphant. See? I told you. People think they can just hide up here, but we look out for our community. The deputy's jaw set. He said slowly, can you step back for a second? She didn't like that. None of them ever do. And that was a moment, the exact moment, everything began to change. I bought the land 12 years ago, before the HOA existed, before the trailhead got a branded sign in a donation box and a drone shot on the county website. Back then, the road was barely a road. More suggestion than promise. I liked it that way. I wanted somewhere the noise couldn't find me. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not my old colleagues, not my family. Especially not my family. I took a leave, then another, then I stopped answering emails. I traded conference rooms for chainsaws, suits for flannel, the hum of service for the creak of timber. Every board in that cabin has a story. Every nail remembers my hand shaking the first winter when I wasn't sure I could pull this off. By the time the HOA arrived, with their laminated bylaws and their monthly fees and their cheerful tyranny, I was already invisible. Or so I thought. The woman on my porch, Karen, if the universe still believes in irony, had moved in 3 months ago. She introduced herself to everyone with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She asked questions that weren't questions. She used words like compliance and values and precedent. She hated my cabin immediately. It didn't match the aesthetic. Too rough, too honest. No stamped concrete, no beige siding, no pre-approved paint color. She filed complaints about my smoke, my generator, my unregistered vehicle, a truck older than her marriage, I suspected. I ignored them all. Until tonight. The older deputy handed me back my ID. Mind if we step inside? Be my guest. Karen inhaled sharply. You can't just. We can, the deputy said. And we will. Inside, the cabin hummed with quiet purpose. Maps on the wall, a shortwave radio, A workbench scarred by use. Bookshelves bowed under the weight of field manuals and histories, and a few paperbacks that had survived everything with me. The younger deputy's eyes lingered on the radio. That's vintage. Still works, I said. Karen hovered in the doorway, arms crossed. This doesn't prove ownership. People break into places like this all the time. The older deputy nodded slowly, then pointed to a framed document above the fireplace. That looks like a deed. Karen scoffed. Anyone can frame a fake. The deputy stepped closer, reading. His posture changed. Subtle, like a soldier recognizing a flag. He said again, "Please wait outside." She bristled. "I called you. You work for us." He met her gaze, calm and unyielding. "I work for the county, and right now, I need a private moment." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The door shut. The cabin felt warmer. The younger deputy leaned in. "Sir," he said quietly, "can you explain why your name is on a federal easement tied to this property?" I looked at the fire, at the way the flames curled like they remembered me. "Because," I said, "this land was never meant to be just a vacation spot." They waited, and because, I added, the woman outside has no idea who she just called the cops on. The radio crackled once, unprompted. A weather alert from 2 counties over. The old kind. The kind nobody listens to anymore. I smiled again. Outside, Karen was pacing. Inside, the truth was about to walk out of the shadows, and it wasn't going to ask for permission. The older deputy, his name tag read Hollis, didn't sit down. He stood in the middle of my cabin like a man recalibrating the room, eyes moving with intention. The younger one, Reed, leaned against the counter, curiosity burning through his professionalism. "Federal easement," Hollis repeated. "That's not coming up here." "No," I said. "It's not." Karen's shadow slid back and forth across the frosted window as she paced the porch, her phone no doubt updating the group chat with a live feed of righteous outrage. I could practically hear the notifications chiming like church bells. Reed nodded toward the framed document. "Mind if I take a closer look?" "Go ahead." He stepped up, read in silence, then exhaled. "This is legit." Hollis turned to me. "You want to tell us why a private cabin in an HOA-adjacent community is tied to a contingency access corridor managed by the Department of the Interior and," he squinted, "2 agencies that no longer officially exist." I shrugged, because sometimes places are important long before people realize it. Silence settled. The fire popped. Outside, the wind shifted. Hollis folded his arms. "Sir, I'm going to ask you something directly. Are you currently violating any local, state, or federal regulations by being here tonight?" "No." "Are you under any form of restriction that would prevent you from occupying this property overnight?" "No." "Then why," Reed cut in, "does your file have a red triangle marker?" That got my attention. Red triangle. I asked. Reed nodded. "Internal flag. We don't see it often. Usually tied to special handling." Hollis shot him a look. "You're oversharing." Reed flushed. "Sorry, so..." I smiled faintly. "It's fine. It means the system still remembers me." Hollis studied my face, searching for arrogance. He didn't find it. What he found instead seemed to make him uneasy. "Mr. Carter," he said, using my name for the first time, "what exactly did you do before you moved up here?" I considered the question, considered how many ways there were to answer it, and how many of them would make this night go sideways. "I solve problems," I said finally, "the kind you don't want headlines for." The radio crackled again. This time, not weather. A clipped burst of static, followed by a call sign that hadn't been used in years. Reed's head snapped toward it. "That frequency isn't assigned anymore," he said. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." The radio went silent. Hollis's jaw tightened. "Did you trigger that?" "No," I said, "but someone else might have." A knock at the door. Not the authoritative one from before. This one was hesitant. Annoyed. Karen's voice followed. "I know my rights. You can't just keep me out here." Hollis opened the door and stepped onto the porch, closing it behind him. Through the window, I watched Karen's posture shift from indignation to expectation. She gestured wildly, pointing at my cabin like it had personally offended her. Reed stayed inside with me. He lowered his voice. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not." "By what?" "By or by this." He hesitated. "You know this could turn into a whole thing, right? HOA complaints, inspections, fines. They can make life miserable." "I know," I said. "That's why they exist." Outside, Karen's voice rose. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the tone. Accusatory. Certain. The tone of someone who believes the rules love them back. Reed glanced at the books on my shelf. "These aren't exactly leisure reading." "Depends on your idea of leisure." He pulled one free. "Emergency infrastructure resilience, post-cascade failure scenarios." "That one's outdated," I said. "The assumptions were too optimistic." Reed gave a short laugh, then stopped when he realized I wasn't joking. "You really live up here alone?" he asked. Mostly. Sometimes the past checks in." The porch conversation ended abruptly. Hollis opened the door again, his expression carefully neutral. Karen stood behind him, arms crossed, victory already loading in her eyes. "Well," she demanded, "are you arresting him or not?" Hollis stepped aside. This gentleman is a lawful owner of this property and is not in violation of any ordinances." Her mouth fell open. "That's impossible. The HOA records are incomplete," Hollis finished, "and not binding in this case." She laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "You're taking his word over mine." "I'm taking the county's word," Hollis said, "and the state's, and the federal government's." Her face drained of color. "Federal?" Reed couldn't help himself. "Yes, Karen straightened. "Then I want to see the paperwork." "You're not entitled to it," Hollis replied. "I'm the HOA compliance officer." Hollis's tone hardened. "You're a private citizen with no jurisdiction here." She sputtered. "This community has standards." "And this property," Hollis said, "predates your community." Karen turned to me, eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" I met her gaze. "Your neighbor." "That's not what I meant." I leaned against the doorframe. "I know." She waited. The silence stretched. The fire crackled. Somewhere deep in the trees, something moved, slow, heavy, unbothered. Hollis cleared his throat. "I suggest you head home. This call is concluded." She didn't move. "This isn't over." "No," I said gently. "It is." She looked at Hollis, then Reed, then back at me. For the first time, uncertainty crept in. The kind that cracks certainty like ice. "You can't just hide up here forever," she said. I smiled. "I'm not hiding." She left without another word, her boots crunching down the steps like punctuation. The deputies lingered. Hollis pulled out his phone, typed something, then paused. "I'm required to ask," he said. "Are you expecting company tonight?" I shook my head. "Not unless the mountain decides to talk." His phone buzzed almost immediately. He read the message. His eyes flicked up to mine. "It says," he said slowly, "that if you're here, we're to log it. No interference. No follow-up. And to advise you of heightened activity." I nodded. "It's starting earlier than I hoped." Reed swallowed. "What's starting?" I walked to the window, looking out into the dark where Karen had disappeared, and where far beyond her understanding, old systems were waking up. "Trouble," I said. "The kind that doesn't care about HOA rules." And somewhere, far from this cabin, a silent alarm finished counting down. The deputies left just before dawn. Hollis shook my hand like a man who understood that some things didn't need to be said out loud. Reed lingered, eyes darting to the radio, the windows, the tree line, like the mountain itself had leaned closer while we talked. "If anything changes," Reed said, "we'll know." "I'm counting on it," I replied. Their cruiser disappeared down the switchback road, red taillights swallowed by fog. The mountain exhaled. For a moment, it felt like the old days, quiet before the weight dropped. I poured coffee and didn't bother sitting. The radio stayed silent, which worried me more than the crackling had. Systems only go quiet when they're rerouting. By mid-morning, the HOA truck arrived. Not Karen. Worse, a white SUV with the association logo stenciled on the door, and a man who looked like he had never split a log in his life stepped out, clipboard already in hand. He didn't knock. He cleared his throat loudly, as if summoning me like an employee. "Good morning," he called. "HOA inspection." I stepped onto the porch. "You're trespassing." He blinked. "Excuse me. This property isn't under your jurisdiction." He smiled thinly. "Sir, we've been advised otherwise." "By who?" "Ms. Whitaker." Of course. He glanced past me, already cataloging imagined violations. "We received reports of unauthorized occupancy, unapproved structures, possible environmental noncompliance." I held up a finger. "Before you continue, I need your full name." He hesitated. "Why?" "Because if you say one more word without it, I'm going to make a phone call that ruins your week." His smile faltered. "You can't threaten." "Name." I repeated. He sighed. "Gregory Allen, HOA Regional Enforcement." I nodded, pulled my phone from my pocket, and dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. It rang once, still answering that line. I asked. A pause. Then, "Only for you." Gregory's face drained of color as he watched me turn slightly away. "I'm at the Northridge cabin," I said. "Yes, that one. HOA interference." Another pause. Longer. Understood. I ended the call and slid the phone back into my pocket. Gregory swallowed. "So, perhaps we should reschedule." "You should leave," I said, "and tell Ms. Whitaker to stop poking fences she doesn't understand." He didn't argue. He walked back to his SUV with the stiff urgency of a man who just realized he'd stepped onto a map that wasn't meant for him. By noon, Karen tried again. This time, she brought company. 3 neighbors stood behind her on the trail. People I'd waved before, people who pretended not to see me when I passed a community mailbox. They looked uncomfortable, like kids dragged into a confrontation they hadn't signed up for. Karen, on the other hand, looked energized. "This man is destabilizing the neighborhood," she announced. "There were police here last night. Federal involvement. That's not normal." "It was a noise complaint," one of the neighbors muttered. Karen shot her a look. "You don't know that." I stepped forward. "What do you want, Karen?" Her eyes flicked, just once, at the sound of her name on my lips. "I want transparency." "You're not entitled to it. We live here. We deserve to know who you are." I studied the group. Fear masquerading as curiosity. Control dressed up as concern. "I'm someone who bought land legally," I said. "Built a cabin, pays his taxes, keeps to himself." "That's not all," Karen snapped. "The sheriff said—" "The sheriff didn't say anything." I cut in. He listened. One of the men cleared his throat. "Is it true this land has federal protections?" "Yes." "Why?" I met his eyes. He looked genuinely curious. Not hostile. "Because," I said, "this ridge is one of the most stable granite shelves in the region. It sits above 3 fault lines, 2 aquifers, and a buried fiber backbone most of you don't know exists." Blank stares. Karen laughed nervously. "That sounds made up." "It's not." "Then why wasn't we told?" "Because you moved here for the view," I said, "not the responsibility." That landed harder than I expected. Karen stepped closer. "You think you're better than us?" "No," I said. "I think I'm earlier." She recoiled. "What does that mean?" "It means when things go wrong," I said quietly. "This place won't be arguing about paint colors." The wind shifted. Clouds rolled low over the ridge, fast and heavy. One of the neighbors shivered. "This is ridiculous. Let's go." They turned to leave. Karen didn't. "This isn't over," she said again, voice tight. "People like you always get exposed." I smiled. Not unkindly. People like me already were. She stormed off. The radio crackled the moment I stepped back inside. All nodes confirmed cascade initiation. I grabbed the handset. Repeat. Static. Then a familiar voice, older now, tired. Carter, it said. We were hoping you weren't still up there. I always am, I replied. Figures. We got failure stacking faster than predicted. Grid instability. Comms degradation. It's not public yet. It will be, I said, soon. A pause. We could use you. I looked around my cabin. The maps, the tools, the quiet Ida and the hard way. I'm already working, I said. The line went dead. By evening, the sky turned the color of bruised steel. My phone buzzed once. No message. Just a location ping, 3 miles south, on a road nobody maintained anymore. I packed without thinking. Habit took over. Radio, batteries, medkit, sidearm I hope I wouldn't need. As I stepped onto the porch, I saw Karen's house lights flicker. Once, twice, then darkness. All across the valley, one by one, lights winked out like a held breath finally released. I started the truck, because when systems fail, people panic. And when people panic, they look for someone to blame. Karen had no idea what was coming, but she was about to learn exactly who I really was, and why this cabin was never just a cabin at all. The truck's engine growled to life just as the last of the valley lights died. For a heartbeat, the world felt impossibly still. No hum of distant generators, no glow bleeding up from the town, no soft buzz of civilization pretending it was permanent. Just wind, trees, and the low, honest sound of an old engine doing what it was built to do. I rolled down the ridge road with my headlights off. Moonlight was enough, and I didn't need to announce myself. The location ping pulsed once on my phone, then vanished. As expected, whatever was happening, the network was already shedding weight. 3 miles south, the road narrowed to a scar of gravel and mud. I pulled over near a culvert and killed the engine. Listened. Voices carried faintly through the trees. Too many for comfort, too agitated for coincidence. I moved on foot. The clearing came into view like a bad memory. 2 county utility trucks parked crooked, hazard lights dead, doors open. A half-dozen people stood in a loose circle, flashlights jittering, voices overlapping. I'm telling you, the whole system just dropped. My phone won't connect to anything. This isn't just a blackout. I stepped into the light. Who's in charge here? I asked. They jumped. One man swore. Another swung his flashlight toward my face, then froze. Who the hell are you? Someone who knows why your radios are useless, I said, and why your trucks won't start. A woman in a county jacket frowned. They ran fine an hour ago. An hour ago, I said, the grid was still pretending. A man with a hard hat stepped forward. We were rerouted here by dispatch. Then dispatch went dead. Because it was designed to, I said. They stared. I pointed to one of the trucks. Your ignition system is tied into a remote shutdown failsafe. It just tripped. That's impossible, the hard hat guy said. Those are for theft. And for cascade containment, I replied. You're parked on a priority corridor. Silence fell. The woman swallowed. How do you know that? I met her eyes. Because I helped write the protocol. That did it. Questions exploded. Too many, too fast. I held up my hands. Listen to me. You're safe for now. But you need to move your people off this road before dark fully sets. No engines. No lights. Foot travel only. That's insane, someone snapped. No, I said. Insane is staying put when the second wave hits. Hard Hat looked around. Second wave of what? Of panic, I said, and misinformation, and folks who think a blackout means rules don't apply. As if on cue, distant shouting echoed through the trees. Not close. Yet, the woman in the county jacket nodded slowly. If you're wrong. I won't be, I said, but if I am, you'll have a good story. If I'm right, you'll be alive. They moved. I watched them disappear into the trees, then turn back toward the ridge. My phone buzzed again, this time with a single word. Now. I drove home fast. Karen's house sat dark and silent when I pulled in. So did every other one on the ridge. No porch lights. No security cameras blinking. The illusion of safety had gone with the power. I grabbed my pack and headed straight for the community center, the only building with a generator big enough to matter. The doors were locked. I forced them. Inside, chaos. People shouted over each other. Kids cried. Phones were held up like talismans, searching for bars that weren't coming back. Someone had lit candles, dripping wax onto the folding tables. Karen stood at the center of it all. "This is exactly what I warned you about," she shouted. "Unregulated individuals. Secretive behavior. Now look." I stepped into the room. "Turn off the candles." She spun. "You don't get to give orders." "Turn them off." Something in my voice cut through the noise. A man nearby reached out and snuffed one with his fingers. I moved to the generator panel, flipped 2 switches, and the hum filled the room like a heartbeat restarting. Emergency lights flickered on. Phones lit up with false hope, then dimmed again. Karen stared. "How did you?" "Because I wired this back up 6 years ago," I said, when the county quietly asked me to. Her mouth opened, closed. I faced the room. "Listen up. The power outage is regional, maybe bigger. Emergency services are stretched thin. There will be no quick fix." Murmurs rippled. "But," I continued, "this building is stable. We have water, limited power, and a clear perimeter. If we stay calm and organized, we'll be fine." Karen stepped forward. "You're not in charge." "No," I said, "but I know how to keep people alive." She scoffed. "You expect us to trust you now." I looked at her, really looked, at the fear behind the bluster, the need to be important when importance had been stripped away. "You already are," I said. "You just don't like it." A crash echoed from outside. Glass. Shouting. Someone screamed. I moved without thinking, heading for the door. Karen grabbed my arm. "Where are you going?" "To handle the part you can't," I said. Outside, 3 figures staggered through the parking lot, drunk, angry, emboldened by darkness. One kicked at a car. Another laughed too loud. I stepped between them and the building. "Go home," I said. One sneered. "Who's gonna make us?" I sighed. 10 seconds later, they ran. I didn't chase. Didn't need to. When I turned back, the community center door stood open. People watched me with new eyes. Karen stood apart from them all, quiet. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing to say. And in the distance, beyond the ridge, the sky pulsed faintly, like a system straining under weight it was never meant to carry. This wasn't over. It was just getting honest. The night stretched longer than it should have. Inside the community center, people settled into uneasy routines. Blankets dragged from cars, kids asleep on jackets, adults whispering in clusters like the dock might overhear them. The generator thumped steadily, a fragile heart keeping panic at bay. Every few minutes someone would look at me, then quickly look away, like acknowledging me might mean accepting something they weren't ready to name. Karen hadn't moved. She sat in a folding chair near the wall, spine rigid, hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone white. No phone, no clipboard, just her and the quiet collapse of the world she understood. I noticed she was watching me the same way Hollis had, measuring, recalibrating. Good. I walked the perimeter, checking doors, windows, sight lines. Habit again. You don't wait for trouble to introduce itself. You assume it's already nearby and act accordingly. Outside, the darkness felt thicker now, lead, the kind that carries sound farther than it should. Footsteps approached behind me. "I didn't know," Karen said. I didn't tone. "That's usually true." She bristled. "I mean it. I didn't know any of this was. Hey, that you were..." She trailed off. I faced her. "You didn't want to know. You wanted control." Her mouth tightened. "That's not fair." "Maybe not," I said, "but it's accurate." She looked past me, out the window. I thought if I followed the rules, enforced them, kept everything orderly, nothing bad would happen. I almost laughed. Almost. The rules are for when things are working, I said. They don't stop things from breaking. She swallowed. So what now? Before I could answer, the radio at the front desk crackled to life. Not the emergency band. Shortwave. My shortwave. I'd set it up quietly, without explanation. The room fell silent as a voice came through, distorted but clear enough. To any node leads, this is control actual. Confirm status. I stepped forward, picked up the handset. North Ridge online. I said, community shelter active. Minimal interference. A pause. Then, copy that, Carter. You're earlier than we planned. Story of my life. A nervous laugh crackled back. We're seeing coordinated failures now. Grid, financial networks, transportation. It's cascading. Karen stared at me, color draining from her face. Who is that? I didn't answer her. What's the timeline? I asked into the radio. Best guess? 48 hours before things get ugly. I nodded, and the corridor, still secure, thanks to you. The line went dead. The room buzzed with restrained panic. Words like financial and transportation hit harder than power outage. Those were abstractions people didn't realize they relied on until they vanished. Karen stood slowly. You're talking like this was expected. It was, I said, just not this soon. One of the neighbors, the man who'd asked about federal protections earlier, stepped forward. Who are you, really? I considered lying, considered deflecting, but the time for that had passed with the lights. My name is Ethan Carter, I said. I used to work in continuity planning. Worst-case scenarios. Infrastructure collapse. What happens when the seams show? A murmur rippled. Karen whispered, your government. I corrected, before it became easy to prepare quietly than argue loudly. She shook her head. So this cabin, this place, is a fallback, I said. One of many, but this ridge is special, stable, isolated, redundant. Her voice trembled. You knew all this, and you still fought us over trash bins and bylaws. I met her gaze. I never fought you. I ignored you. That hurt her more than anger would have. Another sound cut through the room, this one unmistakable. A gunshot. Far off, but close enough to raise every head. I felt the shift immediately. Fear crossing a threshold. We need rules, Karen said suddenly. Curfews. Rotations. Someone needs to be in charge. I studied her. The instinct hadn't left, just changed targets. You're right, I said. We do need structure. Her shoulders relaxed. Then I propose. But not from the HOA, I finished. From competence. Silence. The man with the hard hat nodded. He's right. A woman near the back added, he saved us tonight. Karen looked around. Saw it. Authority slipping like sand through fingers. So what am I supposed to do? She asked, quieter now. I softened. Just a fraction. Help. Listen. Learn. She sat back down, smaller somehow. Over the next hour, we organized what shifts, ration checks, first aid stations. People found purpose. Fear receded into something manageable. The generator kept humming. Near midnight, Reed's voice came through the radio, patchy, urgent. Carter, you there? Go ahead. We've got movement on the South Road. Groups, not coordinated, but armed. How far out? 10 miles in closing. I glanced at the map taped to the wall. The same one Karen had complained about as unsightly. Tell Hollis to hold them at the river crossing, I said. I'll handle the ridge. You sure? I wouldn't say it if I wasn't. I set the radio down and turned to the room. Faces stared back, fearful, trusting, uncertain. I need volunteers, I said. People who can follow instructions exactly. Hands rose, more than I expected. Karen hesitated, then slowly raised hers too. I met her eyes. For the first time, there was no challenge there, just resolve. Okay, I said, here's what we're going to do. As people moved into position, Karen lingered. "You could have left," she said. "You still can." I slung my pack over my shoulder. "This is why I'm here." Outside, the night pressed close, alive with distant voices and the crackle of a world resetting itself the hard way. Karen stood in the doorway, watching me go, not as an enforcer, not as an accuser, but as someone finally understanding that power doesn't come from rules. It comes from responsibility. And the mountain remembered me. Soon, everyone else would too. Dawn didn't arrive so much as it seeped in, gray light leaking over the ridge, revealing a world that had made it through the night changed, but standing. The armed groups never reached us. Hollis held them at the river like I'd asked. Confusion, rumors, fear, those scattered people faster than any show of force. By sunrise, the roads were empty again, littered only with abandoned cars and the quiet proof of bad decisions made in the dark. On the ridge, we kept watch until the sky finally broke open with pale gold. No one cheered. No one clapped. Survival doesn't feel like victory when you know it's temporary. Inside the community center, people stirred awake. Kids asked for breakfast. Adults checked dead phones out of habit, then remembered. The generator coughed but held. Karen stood beside me at the window. "You were right," she said. "No qualifiers. No excuses." "That's not important," I replied. "It is to me." She hesitated, then added, "I built my life on enforcement, on believing that if I controlled enough variables, nothing bad could happen." I nodded. "Most systems are built that way." "And you?" she asked. "What did you build yours on?" I thought of the cabin, the ridge, the easements buried under layers of bureaucracy and denial. "Acceptance," I said, "that bad things happen, and preparation is just respect for that truth." The radio crackled again. "Control actual, calmer now. Carter, update. Community stable. No casualties. Limited resources, but manageable." A breath of relief came through the speaker. "You did good work." "Not done yet." "No," the voice agreed. "None of us are." By midday, word spread. Not through phones or social feeds. Those were still ghosts. But by foot, by voice, by the oldest network humans ever built. People from lower roads climbed toward the ridge. Families, elderly couples, a few with injuries, none with entitlement. We took them in. The cabin became what it was always meant to be, not a retreat, but a node, a place where knowledge and preparation met need. The maps came down from the walls and spread across tables. The radio stayed busy. Decisions were made quietly, without speeches. Karen worked the water station. No clipboard, no orders, just hands, steady and useful. At one point, she caught me watching and flushed. "I know I don't get a medal." I smiled. "You get something better." "What?" "Perspective." She laughed softly. "Figures." Late afternoon, the power flickered once, twice, then stayed off. No groans this time. No panic. Just acceptance. A boy approached me, maybe 10 years old, dirt smudged and serious. "Mister," he said, "my mom says you're the reason we're okay." I crouched to his level. "Your mom's wrong." He frowned. "She is." "Yeah," I said. "It's because people listened." He considered that. "Will the lights come back?" "Eventually." "And when they do?" I looked out at the ridge, the trees standing patient and unbothered. "Things will try to go back to how they were," I said. "Some should. Some shouldn't." He nodded like that made sense. By evening, a helicopter passed overhead. Low, slow, searching. Not rescue. Assessment. The world beyond the ridge was taking stock of its bruises. Karen stood beside me again. "They won't forget you now," she said. "I know. Does that bother you?" I shook my head. I was never really invisible. Just quiet. She hesitated. "When this is over, if it ever is, what happens to the HOA?" I chuckled. "That's up to you." She winced. "I don't think it should exist the same way." "Good," I said. "Then you learned something." She looked at the community, people sharing food, laughter breaking through exhaustion, a fragile but real sense of togetherness. "So did I," she said. As night fell again, calmer this time, I returned to my cabin. The fire welcomed me back. The radio hummed softly, alive. I sat, finally, and let the weight settle. I hadn't wanted to be known, hadn't wanted authority or recognition. But the mountain doesn't care what you want. It remembers what you're for. Outside, the ridge stood firm, granted in silence and patience. And somewhere beyond it, a world learned the hard way that rules without wisdom are just noise. Karen never filed another complaint. The HOA dissolved quietly a year later, replaced by something simpler, a shared responsibility, a recognition that some neighbors are more than neighbors. As for me, I still sleep in my cabin. Because when the lights go out, when systems fail, when certainty collapses, the mountain knows my name. And now, so do they,